morning. Back in October at our last Thursday of the Lunch Bunch gathering, discussion got started about 10 meters, in particular 10 meter FM. And it got me thinking that would probably make a pretty good presentation. Well, November rolled around and Terry came up with a more timely presentation, so I held off. December, we, amazingly enough, had dinner for Christmas. So here we are in January, so you're going to get the 10 meter version. And the question is 10 meters HF or is it VHF? And as you can see, it's basically, I don't know, yes it is, no it isn't, go ask Mac. Who cares? Definitely, maybe, probably.
You left one off. Is it open?
But here's 10 meters as it stands today. Our novice and technician folks got 10 meter privileges back in 1987, and it's mostly down at the lower end, or it's virtually all at the lower end. And they can do CW and data from 28 to 28.3. They can do phone and CW from 28.3 up to 28.5, and they're held down at the bottom end, and they're also limited to 200 watts. Now, of course, general, advanced, and extras got the whole band from 28 up to 29.7, and we used to have up to up to almost, well, right below 30 megahertz. Now, let's decide this right off the bat. Yes, 10 meters is an HF band according to the International Telecommunications Union. And how do they determine that? Well, you've probably seen the chart that says between this megahertz and this megahertz, it's HF or LF or whatever. And the way the ITU defines it, and I hope somebody can help me with this, ITU divides radio spectrum into 12 bands, each beginning with a wavelength, which is the power of 10 meters, with corresponding frequency of 3 times 108 minus n hertz, and each covering a decade of frequency or wavelength. Everybody got that? Okay, good, because I don't have a clue what it means. But this is what it turns out to be. These are the 12 bands that ITU, International Telecommunications Union, uses to identify the various frequency spectrums. As you can see, 10 meters is right at the top of the 3 to 30 megahertz, the HF spectrum. But also, they're just below 30 to 300 megahertz, the VHF spectrum. So it's right on the doorstep. Even though it's an HF band officially, it can also be considered, in some people's minds, a VHF band. I always thought the one was the top end here, THF, and I thought, what's THF? It must be tetrahertz or something like that. Actually, the official definition is tremendously high frequencies, which it is. You're up into tetrahertz here. Now, a little bit of history about 10 megahertz. Or 10 meters. It wasn't until about the late 1920s, that the world got together and started being more formal in their allocations of radio frequencies. And the 10 meter band was allocated worldwide at this International Radio Telephone Conference, and 28 to 30 megahertz was allocated to amateur radio. Keep in mind, 10 meters is our widest HF band. It was 2 megahertz, now it's down to 1.7. And at the time, because of the equipment available, the technology, the understanding of propagation, most of the commercial, maritime, aviation, governmental communication was done at 23 megahertz or below. And the thinking was, okay, above 23 megahertz, a waste of time, let's give that to the hams. They can play with it, they'll never get out of their backyard. Fooled them, didn't we? Now, fast forward a little bit. The top 300 kilohertz was removed from the amateur allocation in 1947 at the same conference, of course, held in Atlantic City. Now, most of that 300 kilohertz went to aviation communications. Now, why did we lose the 300 kilohertz? Very simple, World War II. All the innovations and discoveries during World War II made the VHF spectrum a lot more useful. So the folks that said originally, VHF, totally useless, now they're realizing, yes, it is useful. And here's some of the innovation that occurred during World War II. Magnetron tubes, that allowed for microwaves, definitely VHF and UHF, but up to the microwave spectrum, which allowed greater innovation of radar. Have you ever heard of the chain home radar that the Brits used during World War II? It was VHF, but it was at the low end, around 50 to 70 megahertz. But with the innovation of magnetron tubes, they could start going up into the higher UHF and even microwave area. During World War II, they gained a better understanding of VHF and UHF propagation. So they realized under the right conditions, we can exploit that very nicely. Duct tape was another innovation. And you say, duct tape, you know, that'll fix everything. Does anybody know what the original purpose of duct tape was? Okay, it was to seal ammunition cans. That was the original purpose of duct tape, seal the ammunition cans from moisture. Well, it got out in the field. What did the GIs do? They took the duct tape off. And then they realized, hey, we can still use this stuff. And that's where we can fix our britches, seal up the tent, holes in the tent, etc. It's where essentially the legend of duct tape began. Of course, during World War II, they improved coaxial cable. The original coaxial cable was kind of lossy, frequency limitations. It was improved during World War II to somewhat the coaxial cable that we have today. They developed better and more robust vacuum tubes for VHF and UHF. Prior to that, a lot of the vacuum tubes just couldn't handle VHF frequencies. So during World War II, these tubes were improved, developed. The 829 tube is probably it's a weird looking tube, but it's probably one of the best examples of an improved VHF and UHF tube. Also, necessity is the mother invention of invention. During World War II, they needed to improve strategic worldwide communications. And likewise, there was a need for tactical and short distance communications, and that gave us the walkie-talkie. Now in the movies, you see the guys hunkered down in the foxhole talking on their walkie-talkie. That's not VHF, although some of the later ones were. The original walkie-talkie operated at about 7 megahertz, 40 meter band. But that innovation, instead of going to the big magnetrons and so on, we're talking the small itty-bitty tubes that were developed so we could use walkie-talkies.